Since 2007, the Air Force has tried to retire the A-10 Warthog at least 4 times, not with enemy fire, but with budget proposals. Every attempt was blocked by Congress, by the Army, by the troops who depended on it. It's the only modern combat aircraft another branch went to Congress to save. Why can't the Air Force kill its own plane? That answer begins with a different war entirely. Combat commanders in Vietnam learned quickly that speed alone could not win a battle on the ground. The F-4 Phantom and F-105 Thunder Chief could deliver powerful strikes, but their high speed and limited fuel kept them from staying close when troops needed help most. Pilots often arrived overhead, dropped ordnance, and departed before ground units could even mark enemy positions. The frustration grew as firefights dragged on, and air support circled out of reach, unable to loiter low and slow above the jungle. Reports from the Army's 4th Infantry Division and the Marine Corps made it clear. Ground forces needed an aircraft that could fly low, stay on station for hours, and deliver heavy firepower right when and where it was needed. In 1967, the Air Force responded with the AX program, a formal call for a new kind of plane. The requirements were blunt. It had to cruise below 300 knots, fly as low as 200 feet, and remain over the battlefield for 6 hours on internal fuel. It needed to survive direct hits, carry a 30mm cannon, and operate from rough, forward airstrips. The Air Force, long focused on fast jets and high-altitude bombing, now faced a hard demand for a slow, tough, and persistent attack aircraft. The mission mismatch exposed in Vietnam had been written into a contract. The race to build the ultimate close air support plane had begun. Fairchild Republic's engineers started with a single question: how do you build a plane around a gun? The answer became the A-10 signature, the GAU-8 Avenger. A 30mm 7-barrel rotary cannon sits at the heart of the design. This weapon weighs nearly 2,000 pounds and stretches over 6 feet long, dominating the nose of the aircraft. When fired, the GAU-8 unleashes a recoil force of roughly 10,000 pounds, more than the thrust of one of the A-10's own engines. The airframe had to absorb that shock without shaking itself apart or losing control. Every line of the Warthog's nose, every brace and bulkhead was shaped to keep the gun steady and the shots true. Protection for the pilot was just as uncompromising. The cockpit is wrapped in a titanium armor shell, the so-called bathtub, weighing about 1,200 pounds. This bathtub can shrug off direct hits from 23mm anti-aircraft fire, shielding the pilot and the controls even when the rest of the plane takes damage. Twin General Electric TF-34 engines are mounted high and apart, away from the belly and fuel tanks, making it harder for a single hit to bring the plane down. Redundant hydraulic circuits and dual electrical systems run through the wings and fuselage, so the A-10 can keep flying even after losing major components. What emerges is an aircraft that looks almost ungainly, but every feature, wide straight wings, armored cockpit, exposed engines, serves a single purpose: to survive, to deliver firepower, and to bring its pilot home. NATO generals in the 1970s stared at a map of Central Europe and saw a single terrifying possibility: thousands of Soviet tanks pouring through the Fulda Gap. This corridor of rolling farmland and highways, stretching between East Germany and Frankfurt, was the shortest route for Warsaw Pact armor to reach the heart of Western Europe. Military planners expected that, if war broke out, entire Soviet divisions would surge across this gap, overwhelming Allied ground forces with sheer numbers and firepower. The A-10's existence was shaped by this scenario. Its designers gave it the tools to hunt tanks at low altitude, weaving between tree lines and ridge lines, firing its 30mm cannon into the flanks of advancing columns. The air-land battle doctrine, adopted by NATO in the early 1980s, demanded that air and ground units work as one, striking deep, moving fast, and countering Soviet breakthroughs before they could unravel the front line. The A-10 had to be ready at a moment's notice, operating from rough forward bases just miles from the border. Reforger exercises, the largest NATO war games of the era, tested this idea year after year. American units practiced unloading tanks and A-10s from transports, rushing into position and launching mock attacks on simulated Soviet armor. At Nellis Air Force Base, red flag drills pitted A-10 pilots against dense air defenses and coordinated enemy tactics, forcing them to master the brutal, chaotic reality of European armored warfare. Every sortie, every drill was a rehearsal for the day when the Fulda Gap would become the front line of the Cold War. In January 1991, the A-10 Warthog entered combat for the first time over the deserts of Iraq and Kuwait. While coalition air planners had debated whether the slow, armored attack jet could survive in a battlefield packed with radar-guided missiles and anti-aircraft guns, the numbers that followed erased all doubt. Over the course of Operation Desert Storm, A-10s flew about 8,100 sorties, roughly a quarter of all close air support missions in the war. The Warthog's pilots hunted Iraqi tanks and armored vehicles from low altitude, braving ground fire to deliver the kind of precision the battlefield demanded. By the end of the 6-week campaign, A-10s had destroyed around 900 tanks, about 2,000 other vehicles, and nearly 1,200 artillery pieces. These were not just numbers on a chart. In places like the Highway of Death and the burning oil fields near Basra, the impact was visible. Columns of Iraqi armor left shattered in the sand, artillery emplacements silenced, and Republican Guard units forced into retreat. The GAU-8 Avenger cannon, with its signature staccato burst, became a sound that Iraqi tank crews learned to fear and coalition troops learned to trust. The A-10's reputation as a tank buster was forged in these missions, but the aircraft also proved its versatility by scoring aerial victories against Iraqi helicopters. Pilots like Captain Bob Swain and Captain Paul Johnson became legends overnight, credited with downing enemy aircraft and surviving hits that would have downed less rugged jets. The Warthog's ability to absorb damage and keep flying was no longer theory. It was battlefield fact. For soldiers and Marines on the ground, the sight of an A-10 overhead meant help was not just promised, but delivered. The legend of the Warthog was now written in the wreckage of Iraq's armored divisions. In Afghanistan's mountains and Iraq's tangled cities, the Warthog found a new kind of battlefield. Instead of hunting tanks on open plains, A-10 aircraft circled above scattered firefights, waiting for a call from troops pinned down by insurgents. 6 hours on station became routine. Pilots orbited overhead while ground units moved through villages, valleys, and narrow roads, knowing help was never far away. The GAU-8 Avenger cannon, designed to punch through Soviet armor, now fired short, precise bursts to clear rooftops or halt enemy ambushes, often within a few hundred meters of friendly forces. Rugged landing gear and wide wings let the A-10 operate from dusty strips and forward bases where other jets could not land. As the wars dragged on, the A-10C upgrade brought digital targeting pods and secure data links, letting pilots receive coordinates and video in real time. For soldiers and Marines, the Warthog's presence meant more than firepower. It meant someone was watching, ready to respond the moment trouble started. By 2007, Air Force leadership made its first major push to retire the A-10 fleet. The argument was simple: the future belonged to stealth, and the F-35 Lightning II would soon handle every mission, from air superiority to close air support. Budget proposals called for billions in savings by phasing out the Warthog, citing rising maintenance costs and an aging airframe. Yet every attempt to ground the A-10 ran headlong into resistance. Army generals and ground commanders insisted that no other jet could match its loiter time or survive hits over the battlefield. In 2010, and again from 2014 to 2016, the Air Force renewed its campaign, framing the A-10 as obsolete in a world of advanced air defenses. Each time, Congress intervened. Hearings filled with testimony from Army leaders and combat veterans forced lawmakers to block or slow the drawdown. In 2022, the Air Force launched a new divestment effort, but the result was familiar: a compromise, not a victory. The current plan aims to retire most A-10s by 2028, concentrating the last squadrons in Idaho and South Carolina. As of now, the fate of the Warthog hangs on whether this schedule finally holds, or whether battlefield needs and political pressure keep the old gunship flying past its supposed end date. As conflicts demand boots on the ground, the need for close air support remains urgent. No replacement matches the A-10's unique blend of firepower and protection yet. The debate is not just about hardware. It is about the lives that depend on it. Some legends endure because reality gives them no alternative.